Good day, everyone. Okay, I'm just gonna go straight to it. Okay, today's episode is called "Raising Boys in a Bleep World." Now, what does mean? You fill in the blanks, our dear listeners. We all know that this is a fallen world that we live in, and yes, admittedly, I actually wrote it as a clickbait. But I'm wishing it's a worthwhile one because we're gonna discuss how, despite being in such a you fill in the blanks beep kind of world, there is still hope for our children. So what I'm going to say next might just make my guest today regret for coming to the podcast. We have Kelvin, Seah. And Kelvin, I'm throwing you the burden of convincing me that despite being in such a bleep world, I didn't make the wrong decision of having kids because it's just getting so hard to raise decent boys these days.
Thank you very much for the introduction. And right off the bat, I feel like I need to exit right away because this is clearly a burden.
So to our listeners, by the way, if you hear bing bing bong bong, it's because we're doing this in my living room. And the reality of being a stay-home dad is that your son will be walking in and out of
Perfectly normal.
The studio area. Yeah, but so Kelvin, tell us a little bit more about yourself.
All right. Well, first of all, thanks, Joe, for inviting me on this podcast. I'm glad to be here. And to the listeners, my name is Kelvin, and I am a stay-home father, but I'm also an adjunct lecturer. I have two sons, one is 16, taking his O-levels this year, and the other one is 14. My youngest has moderate autism, and he goes to a special education needs school. So that's just a little bit of myself. On the side, I like to write. I keep a blog, and I also help to support a community of fellow mostly stay-home fathers myself, together with Joe. Yeah.
Cool. Now, if you don't know, I need to actually mention that Kelvin was actually the one who inspired Cliff, our founder, to first even have the thought of starting The Ordinary Dad in the first place. If you don't know what I'm talking about, go back to our very first episode of The Ordinary Podcast, or as we like to call it, TODCAST. Okay, and then you'll hear a little bit more about what we're talking about. So yes, Kelvin, if the sudden burden of having convinced me and the listeners that it's not impossible to raise good men hasn't made you regret yet, maybe what I'm going to say next might just do it. So the reason why I reached out is because, you are much older than I am. I'm saying this lovingly, okay? Not calling you old, but
right.
Old is gold, my friend. Yeah. So which also means you've got more lived experience when it comes to raising boys and navigating current affairs. You also have two boys, just like me. I have two boys. And so I think with your learned experience, I think, there are a few tips, that you can try and give me when it comes to raising men. Now, you are cringing right now.
And
I know this because you are actually a very humble person. And you are someone that will be the first to say that, I don't know what I'm doing.
Yes, absolutely correct. Yes, thank you for saying that, yes.
But I think you're also very well-read. So I think based on the things you've researched, you've read, it'll be good for some of our listeners to know, what can be done, or what are some of the, like I call them markers, red flags, if you will.
Right.
To kind of notice, especially if you are a guy. You don't have to be a stay-home dad, but you're a guy, a father who's trying to navigate raising your own children in this bleep world. So speaking of bleep world, I want to start with what you think about the world we live in today. Do you agree that these are increasingly difficult times? Or is it just me being super pessimistic? Yeah. We have older people actually saying that, you all have it so easy now. But then at the same time, a lot of the younger people do feel like, we are going through a lot of hard times. Some of us are sandwiched. Things are just so volatile these days. Yeah. What are your thoughts?
Well, first of all, I do actually agree that these are increasingly difficult times. I don't agree with those who came before us saying what they do, but only insofar as the fact is that every generation says that whatever the next generation has is a whole lot better than theirs. But I think it has to be located in the context of the times that we live in. So the times these days are a lot more fast-paced, technology being one of the reasons for that, a very major catalyst for a lot of things that are moving at such exponential speed that it's quite impossible sometimes to keep up. So to that degree, I think it's difficult. I think the sense that things are more difficult now isn't just a feeling. It is actually happening. And there are a lot of evidence for that as well in terms of the state of mental wellness, not just here in Singapore, but I think across the world.
Yeah.
So I don't think it's being overly pessimistic at all. No.
Cool. Well, thanks for validating what I'm
Yeah.
feeling sometimes, you know. Actually, there's a term which is VUCA, and I think it was used for leadership training purposes since the 80s, I think.
Yep.
But recently, there's been a reuse of the term VUCA. VUCA meaning V for volatility, U for uncertainty, C for complexity, and A for ambiguity. So without going into too much details, the term was actually created to help leaders in the corporate sector navigate changes in times where it's volatile, uncertain, complex, and ambiguous. So technically, actually the safe for work version of our bleep title is Raising Boys in a VUCA World. I actually don't know whether they literally say VUCA, but you know, it's
They
VUCA.
do, I think. Yeah.
They do?
No, I think so, yeah.
So, do you think it's important that your sons know that this is a VUCA world that we live in?
Well, you know, if you're talking about acronyms, right, I can do you one better.
Yeah.
So more recently, in the year 2018, there was this American futurist and writer called James Cascio, I hope I've got his name right. And he came up with an acronym that is an update on VUCA, VUCA.
Okay.
So his acronym is BANI, B-A-N-I.
BANI.
Yeah, and BANI stands for brittle, anxious,
Okay.
non-linear, and incomprehensible. So actually, if you compare the two, VUCA and BANI, there are obviously a lot of overlaps and similarities. But I think whether you choose to use one or the other acronym, the bottom line is we cannot ignore the reality that nothing is for certain. In this increasingly complex, almost mad world that we now live in, where things can happen in explosive manners, right? Almost overnight or in an instant. We in this generation, in this era of parenting, we need to develop our own strategies to arrest the levels of anxiety that are increasing.
So speaking of tools, speaking of ways to actually navigate this, right? There's this term that's been used, grit. How do you encourage grit in your children? Or as I understand, I think there's also been discussions that grit actually might be overrated.
Yeah, so actually, it's interesting you talk about grit. So go back about 10 years before, about 2005, I think, it was Angela Duckworth, a Harvard professor, who actually was instrumental in launching this whole grit idea into the world and everybody getting excited about it. But I think shortly after she had that famous TED Talk where she was talking about grit, and then her own published book on grit, I think she had to kind of pull back a little bit. And it's not entirely on her, but she did get the narrative run away from her because because of the attractiveness and how the media often catches one idea and just runs with that idea and that alone, right?
Yeah.
I don't think Angela actually really meant for it to go that far.
Yeah.
Because even her study on grit, right, I think it was a sample size that wasn't very large. It was a military academy in US where she did her studies and she came to that conclusion. So whilst grit is reflective of an important element in terms of being able to navigate uncertain times, right, it is not the only factor. And I think any parent can understand that there's so many things else that we have to also try to sort of hotwire into our children and build into our children. Things like integrity, honesty, standing up for the downtrodden, looking out for your fellow men, and just being upright citizens. A lot of other things are also necessary for us to build really strong young men and women in society. So whilst grit is certainly one of them, I don't think it is the be all and end all. And I think to that end too, this idea of resilience also often gets thrown out like a very sexy and important word. But again, I'm not a big fan of that word either, because I think the fact is that it's overused. And at the end of the day, it's just about everyone trying their best. But I think it's important to also help our younger generation understand that even if you fail, it's all right, because failure is also part and parcel of living. So one of the things I would tell parents is you have to actually orchestrate challenges along the way throughout age-appropriate challenges along the way throughout your children's growth, because doing that is going to help them develop the ability to weather bigger and bigger challenges later on. And that's one of the most important roles that parents should play. Yeah.
Orchestrate challenges. That's actually a very interesting concept for me. What examples are there?
I mean, when you think about, for example, if you talk about very young kids, let's say you have toddlers or 4-5-year-olds, right? If you're going to playground, orchestrating challenges means challenging them to take on more difficult obstacle courses, for example. So that's one simple way of doing that.
Right.
In terms of daily lifestyles, right? If you're at McDonald's, for example, you can ask your kid, okay, you want another round of something, go to the counter and ask the lady for it yourself if you want to do that. So challenging them to go a little bit out of their comfort zone, but always, of course, with your watchful supervision from a good distance.
Right.
And then just knowing that you are watching them, giving them some confidence to try to navigate. So each time you push a little bit boundary, it gets better. Yeah. So I think those are just some simple examples. And if you have that built into your family rhythm, then each phase or each season of your children's growth, you would be, if you are attentive and watchful as a parent, you should be able to look out for other opportunities to challenge the child to just move a little bit out of the comfort zone, like take the bus by yourself. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Of course, pack your school bag when it's time to finally enter primary 1 mainstream education. So all those things, and even schools these days do try to encourage parents to let go of the reins a little bit, because we've always been known to be a bit of like a what we call a helicopter parent, or a newer term is snowplow parent.
Oh, wow.
So a
I didn't know
snowplow
that.
parent, you know, helicopter at least there's still a distance. Right? A snowplow literally push the snow away from the from your kid's path, so the kid's a smooth path. Can you imagine? So if you are a parent that is regularly in that space of doing that, and I will raise my hands up and say that I have often been guilty of being a snowplow parent myself.
Okay.
Then I would say that on the by and large, if you are more sensitive and attentive to that, then there's a better chance your child will be more resilient, okay, using that word resilient, to a Barney world or VUCA world.
Ah, okay. My orchestrated challenge is housework.
You and me both, man. I think that applies to everybody listening in too, right? We were being honest with ourselves.
No, so okay, I mean, to give you an anecdote, right? I think my son was primary 2 then,
Yes.
which is 8 years old.
Right.
And I thought, wow, like he's probably at the age where he can handle certain kind of housework like washing dishes, folding his own clothes. So there's once I said, okay, Tyler, why don't it's time for you to try washing, the dishes. So to be very honest, when I first told him that, I was a bit anxious myself. Because dishes,
Yes.
this glass,
Yeah,
this
it's
breakable
breakable, yeah.
things. And then water. Our sink isn't the best designed sink. if you, I mean, it's smaller. If you wash it at a certain angle, water will just spray everywhere. And I myself struggle with it.
Right.
But I thought, you know what? What's the worst that could happen? Break some glasses and then, but watchful eye lah. I'm there.
Right.
So I said, just try.
Yeah.
And so he was anxious at first, reluctant even.
Yeah.
But then I said, Papa is going to be here.
Yes.
He tried. Indeed, the soap water was kind of everywhere around.
Yeah.
When he was finished, but he had the biggest smile that I can still remember now.
Wow.
At the end of everything.
That's great.
Almost like that sense of achievement.
Right.
Yeah. And then subsequently, I noticed that it wasn't just about like washing the dishes. He managed to problem solve himself. The next time I said, okay, why don't you wash those utensils that was left in the sink? He would take his chair, his small little chair.
Right, the stool, right.
The stool, bring it to the
Kitchen
sink area.
area, yeah.
He would sit on it
Ah,
and then started washing.
nice.
Both because it's more comfortable, as well as
Very
the
good.
fact that actually it gives him a better height.
Yes.
Yeah, and I was like, oh wow, there's something here,
Yes.
And so I think what it has also taught me is that don't belittle the little things, or the ordinary things even.
Yep.
That would actually empower your kids to learn to be a little bit more, again, buzzword, resilient. Yeah, and sometimes we think that, they must go through army or like go through something that's super duper difficult. But actually, no, like it's in your everyday that you
Yeah.
can encourage kids to
Right.
be able to face up with this volatile, uncertain, or like in your words, brittle, anxious world.
Yeah, and I
Yeah.
think picking up what you said, right? I think if parents listening in, right, if it's at the sacrifice of breaking a few dishes, plates, and cups in order to unlock, in a sense, some new talents and new confidence in your children, then it's worth it to break those because the child is going to pick up a skill that's lifelong and is going to see the child through many years ahead of them. And to the point about rites of passage, right? I think in Singapore, there's a tendency amongst a lot of families and parents to think of national service for the guys as a rite of passage to await. And then when that comes, right, then the army will help take care of my children and raise my boys to become
Finally,
men.
my boy is a man.
But I think that's probably a mistake. It shouldn't be the only one. And in fact, rites of passage, especially for boys transitioning to manhood, needs to start a little bit earlier. So if I were to put a number to it, I would say at least by the time your boy hits about 12 or 13, which in case,
Wow.
you guess like our son, right? He's 9 now.
12 or 13.
Yeah, so like Tyler is 9 now, right? In about 3 years' time, as the father, you need to start planning for some kind of a ritual or passage. Think about it. I mean, if you think about it, for example, right, the Jewish have this bas mitzvah, and I think that's an excellent rite of passage. And they're not the only ones. There are a few other cultures in the world that do have some kind of thing built into their kids so that they, at the age of 13, understand that now they've left childhood and they're moving into a new phase. If you even go further in history to like medieval times and before, you recognize that actually even the term teenager, which we are obviously using quite a lot of, is itself a pretty modern English word. Like it's only in the last 100 years. Prior to that, this concept of a teenager doesn't exist because why? A lot of kids, when they were like 12, 13, right, they will transition into what we call like a mentorship or an apprenticeship. So what that means is that in the olden days, before the advent of the Industrial Revolution, you find that a lot of fathers mentor their children, and the child understudies, becomes an apprentice to the father. And you can imagine every day being with your dad, learning a craft. It can never just be about the craft. It is also about learning how to be a man along the way every single day.
Wow.
We seem to have departed from that in the last 100 years. And I think maybe if we start to recognize that historically, actually, that's always been the case, and this is a departure, we need to get back to that. So a lot of parents might want to seriously think about what can I do to make a clear demarcation for my kid between what is childhood and then what is becoming an adulthood.
So I think it's really beautiful what you've mentioned about taking ownership of helping your own son transit into adulthood as a man.
Yeah.
But what are some real examples? What kind of like rituals? Because you mentioned bar mitzvah and all that, but in Singapore, what can we do actually?
Well, I mean, okay, to be fair, I cannot necessarily say that there is a one size fits all, and I'm not exactly sure that I have dutifully completed it for both my sons, especially my youngest one.
Sure.
But for my eldest one, I distinctly remember that after his PSLE, and this was even before the PSLE began, I told him that, son, at the end of the year after PSLE, right, you and I are going on our father-son retreat, just the two of us. And he says, what's happening? He says, well, I'm going to find a place, we book a room, we stay for like 1 night or 2 nights, and we just have some fun and some bonding time. And so prior to that, I read up a little bit, I picked up some useful resources, and those resources have to do with talking about the transition into the next season of his life. And these cover areas like how do you conduct yourself, even areas like more in terms of puberty and the changes that happens in hormonally, your physical, even your mental, emotional things. So talking about those things and using that as my sort of gift to my son as a rite of passage to spend just the quality, just him and me, nobody else. His mom isn't there, his brother isn't there, it's just the two of us connecting. Because I know that after that, when he moves to secondary school, right, there's going to be a lot of different things coming at him.
Yeah.
And it's going to be harder and harder for me to have that kind of one-on-one time with him. We talk about really very raw and honest things like, how to struggle with conflicts, how to talk about marriage, talk about sex. These things were things we talked about in as much as we could in the time we have, so that when these things come up again, and they will in the years ahead, right? We have something to base on to talk about it.
Right. There's a foundation that you all started off with already.
Yeah. I mean, I want to qualify to listeners that I'm not coming here to tell you, this is how you do it.
Sure.
And I'm not even sure if I did it correctly.
Sure.
To be honest, I say a lot of things on this podcast, but I want to be very upfront to say that I'm not always sure I got it right. And I'm not always sure that this is necessarily the thing for everyone listening in, but this has been what I feel works for my family, works for me. And every listener here will have to pass out whatever they can from it and decide whether that works for you too. And so at the end of the day, parents, you still have the biggest say. You still are the one that needs to drive that through. Don't outsource it to others. Let your own conscience, your values be the one to guide your children. And they look to you for those guidance. And as we were talking earlier about this uncertain world we live in, right, all the more they need an anchor. Parents, you are the best. We are the best place to be those anchors. Yeah.
I can't remember if I read somewhere or it was on another podcast where you actually also work with your wife when it comes to this rite of passage. I mean, so far we've been talking about how we as men ourselves help our children be better men in this volatile world, right? But I remember there was once I heard this example of this father who worked with his wife to say that, you know what, from this age onwards, our son is going to explore this new zone of what it means to be a man. And so there must also be a very intentional letting go from the mother's perspective. And I thought what they did was beautiful. I think the mother actually brought the son out for a nice meal and said that, son,
Right.
for the last 12 years, I've been the nurturing mother. You've come to me for a lot of things, for a lot of nurture.
Yep.
I will still continue to do that, but you need to know that you are transiting to becoming a man now.
Right.
And so there will be moments where you need to go to your father as well when it comes to issues with regards to manhood. Because I mean, on a very practical level,
Sure.
the man also. I mean, the father is the one who also knows what the son will be going through.
Yes.
And so this is a shout out also to go about that ritual, not just as an individual man. I think for myself, speaking from a male perspective, I like to think of it as a burden that I need to carry myself. But I realize also that, hey, no, actually it's a partnership. It's something that I can speak to my wife and work with my wife as well.
Yeah.
And thank you for mentioning that, sometimes we don't always get it right. I think that's the beauty of raising a family as well.
Yeah.
Especially in this world where it is so hard to navigate sometimes.
Absolutely.
That at the end of the day, even though you make mistakes with your family is still always there and you have each other.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk about masculinity now.
Ooh.
See, I can't even pronounce the word correctly. I stumble because I'm anxious now. Let's talk about masculinity. I'm going to share what I feel. It's going to be an unpopular opinion. I feel that it's a difficult time to be a man. Okay, I said it. Okay. Yeah. There's so much to talk about masculinity. Whenever people mention masculinity, the first thing that pops in your mind is toxic masculinity. But I think I kind of have this question. Sure, there's Andrew Tate, if you've heard about him, who's a huge influence about what being a man means.
Yep.
We won't go into whether it's right or wrong, but I think what I'm getting at is there's so much definition of what it means to be a man now. That if we don't guide our boys right, I feel like we're going to have a lot of identity issues. What exactly does it mean to be masculine? So, in your opinion, what does it mean to be a man?
This is such a potentially explosive discussion, and I think that a lot of people have, obviously, people more learned than you and I have weighed in on this matter. Well, I think from a young age, you need to expose children to gender roles. You need to expose children to what daddies, mummies do. You need to expose them to a larger family circle as well. whether it's extended family, your aunts, uncles, have them be amongst as many people as possible and just observe the world as they grow, and to recognize that mutual respect and honor is an important part of that. And anytime you denigrate someone else, then you can run into a lot of issues about your own identity and your own view and perspective about how genders should interact with one another. I mean, one of the things that keeps popping up relentlessly in the last few years in particular is this whole issue of bullying in school, for example.
Yeah.
Right? And my son may hate me for saying this, but he was at one stage a bully as well.
Okay.
And I think that a lot of times we do recognize that it is not a behavior that is obviously one we want, but we have to understand the precursor, what brought it about. And I mean, was it because the child had some notion that was skewed about what it means to behave that way to somebody who is at a disadvantage?
Right.
Making exploiting the disadvantage to bully that person, whether it's a gender issue or it's just among the same gender, right? The point is the power. The point is the lording over somebody else isn't something that should be encouraged, but what brought it about. Parents need to have oversight about this, but not get too micromanaging about it as well. And as the children grow older, sometimes you also need to equip them with the ability to, handle it on their own, find a way out of it. It's interesting, the word equip, I was just learning, right? If you go to the Greek root word, right, equip has this idea of healing and restoration.
Wow.
Yeah, so it's not just about I give you a skill.
It's not just like training.
Right,
Yes.
because in the process of equipping somebody to understand these challenges, you are also helping them see that sometimes when something goes off, there could be a root cause that we don't see. Just like roots of a tree are hidden under the soil, you don't see it visibly, right? There are root causes that brought it about. If society slows down enough to take time to figure that out, right, you might actually see that actually the bullying or the harassment or the toxic masculinity, how not to be, there are other drivers of these things. This is raising kids in a very volatile world. We were talking about that earlier, right? And there's a lot of things that the world is actually trying to tear your child's attention away from, to things that you can lead kids to deviant behaviors if you allow society to parent. If you like technology, obviously, then we talk about this whole issue about screen time and mobile devices and social media and all that. And now AI is into the picture as well. All these things are completely a new landscape we're navigating. Parents, you need to stay on top of that and to recognize the potential danger. I'm not saying that I've succeeded. I haven't. I still struggle with my son playing his gaming on phone and say, hey, get your eyes off the phone and be on it for an hour and so on and so forth. And it's just that whole song and dance trying to navigate.
Wow. Speaking of outsourcing parenting, you talk about screen time, you talk about AI. I feel like there's another aspect which a lot of parents, myself included, get very uncomfortable when it comes to parenting, which is talking to our kids about sex.
Yep.
Yeah. I remember even in my time when I was younger, not that my parents were trying to shy away from it, but I think there were very healthy programs to teach children about sex. And I think those are great. But I personally came to a point in my own parenting where I realized that, I can't wait for those programs to happen. Because it is such a volatile world. It's such a world where, they get exposed so quickly these days. I need to have that conversation with them quickly. I'm going to have another unpopular opinion.
Sure, go
which
for
is
it.
that we can't totally stop our boys from watching porn. They are bound to encounter it at some point. So it's not if, but when, when they encounter porn.
Yep.
See, my boys are like less than 9 years old now. What can I do?
Yeah. No, I think you're absolutely right. And I don't think anyone should think of what you just shared as unpopular. In fact, I would worry if they do, because you are absolutely right. You almost have to now assume as a parent that the day your child owns a mobile device, is the day that you've lost them to porn. I know that sounds really
Drastic.
earth-shattering.
Yes.
Yes, I think so too. And I think some years back I would have thought the same too, but I don't think that anymore because of the relentlessness of the technology. And I want to say that to parents like that, don't be shocked, please. I think we're past that. We need to actually know and accept the fact that it's going to happen. So what we're going to do about it. So what you're going to do about it is have a conversation. Do not come across as blame shifting or trying to get angry with your child. It doesn't work. What you need to do is, okay, so we've seen this, so what we're going to do about it? Let's talk about this. And that's assuming you have never had the birds and the bees conversation, which I think now, if your child reaches 10 and you haven't had it, right, you're probably already late. You need to be having that conversation already. Of course, age appropriate, and there are many resources out there. I'm sure parents, if you dig a little bit, you can find them easily. But the thing is, you need to have that conversation as early as possible because puberty is actually happening earlier and earlier. So as little girls are already starting their puberties as young as 8 or 9 in some places. So I think it's something that parents should not ignore because you need to be equipped. You need to know how to navigate this conversation. You need to be in that space, and you need to know that when your child sees porn, how do you explain to them that pornography is ultimately deviant behavior? It's ultimately all about control. It's ultimately about power. It's ultimately whatever you see there is a fantasy, and it is not reality. Even though it looks extremely real, because everything on the screen, surely that's how it happens in real life. It doesn't. And of course, it's a potential relationship breaker. It is potentially harmful in ways that doesn't always appear obvious, but it actually bleeds into a lot of the way you regard gender roles, the way you regard relationships in the world, and gives you a very skewed and not a real reflection of what the world should be, and we should resist it. And so these kind of values and conversation needs to be talked about with your child. And sometimes I think if fathers are honest with themselves, I don't think any father it has never seen porn before, right? So I think it's also about being honest. And like I was honest with my child. I said, yeah, of course I have seen pornography before. But the thing is that you need to tell your son, especially for boys, right, who are very visual creatures most of the time we are, that these things are not representative of how relationships are to work. You need to be ready to have these honest conversations, no blaming, no finger pointing, just honest conversations about it. And it is not a one-time thing. It has to be potentially maybe a lifetime or for a very long season to keep helping the child to navigate. Because as we do that, the porn industry is also not sitting on its laurels. It's obviously trying everything to stay on top of things to get people to be addicted. So it's an addiction. So you have to recognize the fallbacks about addictions and do something about it.
Okay. So according to what you've mentioned, I should stay calm. I shouldn't be shocked and like, oh my gosh, my son's watching porn. Oh my gosh. Yeah. So
Don't
stay calm.
overreact.
Don't overreact. Go to him and very calmly explain what porn actually is.
Yep.
Why it's not representative of relationships.
Yep.
Why, in terms of our family values, we do not want to go about that action of watching porn, and what it also represents in terms of to his mother.
Yep.
Yeah. What else? I mean, is it just that, and then just okay, all right, bye.
I mean, of course, if you are intentional and you take the time, then there are always opportunities to raise up different facets of the same topic of discussion. You know? Because, I mean, sex and gender is entrenched in society anyway. So anytime you see gender roles being played, just have a conversation with your kids about it. Oh, and it can be anything, like can women drive a bus? Of course they can. I used to remember when my youngest was, he was a bit younger, he was like, oh, that bus driver is actually a woman, I say, sure, why not? Why can't we do that? Or a man who is a nurse. And in fact, one of the things I wanted to also bring up is the fact that actually what is important is to start to help guys increasingly to see that society has always predominantly moved men in the direction of STEM careers, STEM, right?
Right.
Science, technology, engineering, mechanics, I think. Yeah. But at the same time, maybe it's time to also encourage that, don't think of that as one, that guys are predisposed to that only, but guys can also move to what we call the heal industry. Heal stands for is HEAL.
Yeah.
H is for healthcare, E is for education,
Okay.
A is for administration, and
Okay.
L is for literacy. And actually, those industries, there's a dearth of guys in that place. There's a bit of a mismatch. There are too many women in that industry.
Yeah.
And actually, we should move them in that direction. So have bigger conversations, is what I'm saying to your
Right.
question.
Right.
That not just talk about sex and pornography itself, but expand it to talk about how should men and women play their roles. Listen to them too. What do the children think about as they grow up? Have a two-way conversation, not just top down. You know what I mean? We as parents, honestly, we don't always know everything.
Wow. So far we've been discussing a lot about how to help our sons succeed. But I think there's a high chance that despite all we have done, our sons wouldn't turn out the way that we hope for them to be.
Right.
As a youngish dad, I think it scares me.
Yeah.
In fact, I have friends who don't want to have kids because they're thinking, why should I bring human beings in this world? This world is so screwed up. But I think as much as I'm scared, that fear is part of what makes this journey meaningful. And maybe that's what our kids really need. Not perfect parents, not, parents who have gotten it right. But
There are none, by the way.
there are none. Yeah. But like what you've been expressing, parents who are present, who sometimes, say that, I'm still here, despite all the challenges, despite all the failures even, that you've gone through.
Yeah. I mean, honestly, parenting actually comes down to the parents. So actually, for those, I know there could be listeners out there who are single, and that's your choice, and that's great. But I have come to learn that the single greatest portal to self-awareness and discovery and self-maturation, right, has happened for me in the last 16 years as a parent.
Wow.
It is actually the parenting journey that actually matures me. So actually, if you want to have a better awareness of yourself, become a much more mature an adult in every sense of the word, right? Actually, parenting is the single greatest portal into that discovery.
That brings us to an end. It's all the time we have for today. Thank you so much to my young at heart friend, Kelvin.
Yes, thank
I
you.
always enjoy our conversations. Yeah. If you feel that like our conversation is intense, by the way, this is the kind of intensity that we have. Filled with a lot of lightheartedness as
We
well.
also
over
joke
kopi.
around lah. Don't give your listeners the wrong impression.
No, but what I mean is that I really enjoy our conversations because I think it's not superficial.
Likewise, thank you so much.
It
Joe.
really goes deep, and I think it's given me life in terms of you're an illuminator. Yeah.
Oh gosh, you
You're
are
an
borrowing
illuminator.
phrase from David Brooks' How to Know a Person book, which by the way, listeners, I highly recommend that.
Yes.
That bestseller from 2023 is an excellent book and a definitive book on communications and listening, and everything that I've been saying in part comes from that. So thank you, Joe. I know you're reading that book too.
Yes, I am. All right. So
Yes.
while we cannot control how the world turns out, or even how our kids turn out, I think we can control how we show up for them today. And maybe, just maybe, that's enough to tilt the scales towards a better future. Here at The Ordinary Dad, we believe in the power of stories, and this podcast is just one of the different ways we're hoping to encourage other dads on their individual journeys as parents. Till then, while parenting is anything but ordinary, the love, care, and commitment of ordinary dads do wonders to this sometimes mundane and perplexing parenting journey. You're not alone, ordinary dads. See you soon.